So when I talked about who would be the best offensive team in the NBA, my pick was the Golden State Warriors, which is me basically saying the sky is blue. Question is, could Golden State also be the best defensive team in the NBA this season as well? Yeah, it's very possible. They were number 2 this previous year. It starts with Draymond Green. The guy is just a freaking cheat code, man. I mean, he was pretty much made in a lab when you look at his ability to defend all 5 positions, defend the low post, everything. Kevin Durant has grown into a damn good defensive player. Klay Thompson, he's got size, he knows how to switch, he can defend multiple guys as well. The only fear I would have with the Warriors would be if Andre Iguodala is going to take a dip this season, because he's up there in age, he is just sometimes slower, which would equal to him just not being as effective as a defensive player. We're just going to have to see. Now, San Antonio led the league in defensive rating this previous season. Kawhi Leonard is Kawhi Leonard. Is it a coincidence that the first team involved Draymond and now this one involves Kawhi? The other really good defender on these guys is Danny Green, who I think is a little underrated. I would say he is one of the better defensive perimeter players in the NBA, at least. One of the, top 6 or 7, I would say, without really thinking about it. And so these two together is really good, and I think Kawhi and Danny Green, it could be the best set of defensive wings in the NBA. There's another team here that's going to come up that could challenge them for that one. But besides those two, I think Popovich is going to have to get pretty creative, and I do trust him to be able to do it. But when we just look at the personnel here, start with LaMarcus Aldridge. He's not exactly the swiftest guy in the world, but the Spurs have done a good job of finding ways to make it work with him. They'll have him show on a pick and roll real quick and then have him quickly get back to his big guy, and they execute this really well. They'll have Pau Gasol just back up on every single screen and roll to where he doesn't have to defend in space, but he can still use his size to deflect passes and be a rim protector. And this worked really well in round 2 against the Houston Rockets, where San Antonio was able to stop Houston's high-powered offense. So I do trust that Pop's going to be able to do it, but at the same time, it might not be the easiest thing in the world. Also, we're seeing a LaMarcus Aldridge clip 2 times in a row because I'm just professional with this type of stuff. Whatever, I got more time to talk. We can go to the point guard position. Tony Parker could have a tough time. Physically, I mean, he's not a very strong guy, he's not very big, and his athleticism, which at one time was a advantage for him because of his speed, it's definitely dwindled. They're just going to have to find ways to figure it out. Similar thing can be said for Patty Mills as well as Rudy Gay, who I think from a physical standpoint could be a good defender, but he's never really had that mentality. And then you got Manu as well. I think the Spurs are still going to be damn good, but I do have fears if they could actually be number 1. Now we can get to the Utah Jazz. Rudy Gobert could be my favorite player in the NBA at this point. He is just everything you want from a center defensively. I mean, yeah, the guy only averages, well, quote-unquote only, averages about 2.5 blocks a game, but the effect that he has and the amount of shots that he alters or guys he intimidates is way beyond just what shows up in the stat sheet. But Ricky Rubio is also a good defender as well, who is their new point guard. I would say he's about on level with George Hill, who was their point guard this previous season, so there's not going to be a drop-off there at all. Offensively, I might have a different conversation with you about Rubio, but that's not the point of this video. And then we look at the other starters, who at least who I think they'll be. One is Rodney Hood. I think he's okay. He's not going to kill you, and I would say the same thing for Joe Ingles. But then when we look at a couple acquisitions they made this offseason, one is Thabo Sefolosha, who is still one of the better wing defenders in the NBA, who can defend a couple positions. And a few NBA people will tell you that Ekpe Udoh, who they also got, really progressed as a defender overseas. We're going to have to see there. The other big one is Derek Favors. If Derek Favors is healthy, then this could be like a really difficult front court to score on, because Favors has shown an ability to move around the floor very well, and you combine that with what Gobert does, that could be a scary defensive team. We go to the Miami Heat, who were one of the best defensive teams in the league this previous season. I think it was a little underrated how good they were defensively. Or maybe it wasn't, I don't know. I gotta give Hassan Whiteside credit. I mean, sure, I do think he still has some problems when it comes to defending outside of the paint, but he's also made some decent strides in that area as well, to where I don't consider him just a rim protector anymore. I would say that he is a good overall defensive player. And then the other guys on the team, one of which is James Johnson. Hopefully the outburst that he had this previous year keeps up. Rodney McGruder was an awesome defensive rookie for them. But I think what could take Miami to the next level is if Justice Winslow is healthy. Because, I mean, if you've watched my channel for any extended period of time, you will know that Winslow is one of the more intriguing young players in the NBA to me, because I just think his defensive potential is through the roof. Now, hopefully he's 100% ready to go when this season begins, and if you take what Miami was already doing, and then you insert Justice Winslow into that, I think that could potentially be the best defensive team in the NBA. They look good. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies, they've been a mainstay when it comes to defense for quite a while now. The grit and grind is what it's been stylized as. Mike Conley, no complaints whatsoever defensively from him at the point guard position. Marc Gasol weirdly keeps getting better as he gets older. His rebounds are never going to go up, but everything else, he's really kind of something to marvel at with how good he is defensively, even though he's not a natural athlete. He's very smart, and he's just mobile enough to make it all work. They have not re-signed JaMychal Green just yet. I assume they're going to. Who knows what the contract will actually be. But he's a power forward who, similar to Draymond, can do a whole bunch of things, even if he's not on Draymond's level. And they also haven't re-signed Tony Allen just yet. And I do fear that he could drop off given his age. Similar situation to Iguodala. But Tony Allen, even at 80%, is still a damn good defensive player, so they will definitely be in contention. And we got to talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder, because they made quite a few moves this season, man. One of which, of course, is Paul George. And when I was talking about the other wing combination, besides Kawhi and Danny Green, it's these guys here, because Paul George, and then we'll talk about Robertson in a second. Steven Adams is a very good defensive big dude, who his physical nature has given teams like the Warriors some problems in the past. And then we get to Robertson here. I mean, him and Paul George together, I think I would still go with Kawhi and Danny Green just because Kawhi is so freaking good. But those two are not a too distant second, in my opinion. In before, there's another one that I'm completely forgetting about. And Patrick Patterson is a nice defensive power forward as well, who can move around the floor kind of well. They're going to be good. I want to mention Minnesota just because whatever. Jimmy Butler's awesome, but I mean, Jeff Teague isn't too good on that side of the floor. Wiggins and Towns have to make progress. Jamal Crawford's not good on defense. I don't think Minnesota's going to be in the conversation, but I felt like talking about them anyway. My pick is going to be Utah. I think Rudy Gobert is, he is who he is. And then the thought of Derek Favors being healthier on top of getting Thabo Cephalosha, I think Utah is going to be the best defensive team in the NBA this season.